right, good afternoon, everyone. We are standing here today in Belmar, one of New Jersey's incredible shore towns. Belmar's mile-long beach is part of Jersey's 130-mile coastline, a coastline that extends from Sandy Hook to Cape May. And our pristine coastline here in New Jersey is one of our state's greatest treasures. In 2016 alone, our Jersey shore brought in $44 billion in tourist revenue and created over 838,000 jobs. And that's why I'm so proud to announce today that my office has filed a lawsuit to prevent drilling off of New Jersey's coast. Last month, Washington gave the first green light to companies that want to start doing seismic testing in the Atlantic along the eastern seaboard, a region that hasn't experienced this type of testing in nearly 3 decades. And here's why that matters. Seismic testing is the first step before oil and gas companies can start drilling off our shores, because it lets them search for that oil and gas along the sea floor. So if we're able to stop seismic testing now, then we can defeat offshore drilling in the Atlantic and off of New Jersey's coast. And seismic testing is a problem in its own right as well. To find oil and gas off our shore, drilling companies rely on extremely loud air blasts, which means that seismic testing will affect more than 300,000 marine mammals like dolphins and whales. And it'll even harm endangered species, including damaging their habitats. Now, that violates multiple federal environmental laws which protect our marine resources. But the federal government is putting the fossil fuel industry above New Jersey's residents, above our environment, and above the law. That's why my office filed a lawsuit today, along with 8 other states, alleging that the federal government violated 3 different environmental laws. In New Jersey, we're committed to pushing back, to fighting against offshore drilling at every step of the way. But that's not all we're doing today, which brings me to the second part of today's announcement. Even as the Interior Department officials try bringing offshore drilling to the East Coast, former Secretary Ryan Zinke agreed to exempt the Florida coast, and only the Florida coast, from those plans. Now, Secretary Zinke may have resigned, but a key question remains unanswered. Why did Florida get an exemption, but New Jersey did not? Now, Washington officials have refused to say why. So in April, I filed a public records request demanding answers. And when the federal government stonewalled us, I filed a lawsuit. And here's the good news, the other reason we're here today. The federal government admitted in that case that it needs to share the documents that we demanded. They're now sending us those documents in batches. We've reviewed the first batch of documents, and that review has confirmed what we suspected all along. There is nothing, I repeat, nothing in the documents to justify treating Florida differently than New Jersey. And here's what else we know so far from our review, from the government's own records. On January 4th, 2018, Florida Governor Rick Scott sought a meeting with then Secretary Zinke to talk about offshore drilling in Florida. As you can see from the poster board to my left, his email didn't provide any details on why Florida should get that exemption. But 5 days later, 5 days after that meeting request, the Interior Department exempted Florida from offshore drilling. So New Jersey officials asked for the exact same treatment. The issue that I'm speaking about right now spans the ideological spectrum. And that's why back in January, Governors Murphy and Christie and Senators Menendez and Booker wrote a joint letter to Secretary Zinke. They wanted to show that, quote, when it comes to protecting New Jersey's coast, New Jersey speaks with one voice. The letter laid out the reasons why offshore drilling would be bad for New Jersey's environment and our economy. But we never got the same exemption. And now we're left looking for answers. So today, in New Jersey, we say enough is enough. And here's my call to the federal government. If you have actual evidence that justifies treating Florida differently than New Jersey, then turn it over. But if you don't, then exempt New Jersey from offshore drilling as well. And here's my promise to our residents. We're going to keep asking these questions over and over because New Jersey officials from different parties and different administrations know that offshore drilling is bad for our state. And we're going to keep this fight going for as long as we have to. Now, today's announcement is just part of our efforts to protect New Jersey's environment. We filed the first natural resource damage, or NRD, cases in a decade to require polluters to pay for the harms they've caused. 4 NRD cases filed this year alone. And earlier this month, we also filed 8 environmental justice cases across the state. And we met with Camden residents to find out how we could do even more. And of course, we've been challenging officials down in Washington whenever they roll back important environmental rules that protect New Jersey residents, whether it's on the climate, clean air, clean water, or other important issues. But even with all that we have accomplished, this year, today really matters. New Jersey's coastline is the pride and joy of our state, and we're committed to doing whatever it takes to protect our shore. Now I want to turn it over to Deputy DEP Commissioner Debbie Manns, who's here because Commissioner McCabe could not be, for a few remarks. Debbie?
Thank you. I really want to thank the Attorney General and his team. We are really enjoying our work in partnership with them on so many issues, including this one. And I'm proud to be here today to say that we're confronting the federal government's unwise decision of allowing offshore oil exploration off of our coasts by joining this lawsuit. In an era when we're making so many steps towards the future in New Jersey with cleaner air and cleaner energy, it's unfortunate that we still have to fend off the proponents of harmful and outdated energy sources. And I want to make it very clear when I say that DEP stands with Governor Murphy that we are strongly opposed to seismic testing and offshore drilling. Not only is offshore drilling in direct opposition to so many things that New Jerseyans hold dear, seismic testing for oil has a direct impact on our marine ecosystems and fisheries. We're not even getting a straight story from the federal government about this proposal, despite the Attorney General's best efforts towards transparency and fairness. Florida received an exemption from the drilling plans, but not in New Jersey, and no one from the federal government has said why. Transparency and adherence to the law are key guiding principles at DEP, and we demand the same from our federal government. What's most important is that the coastlines of all states are protected, as they are valuable natural and economic resources. What we stand to lose in New Jersey is more than our precious shore. We have a 130-mile coastline that's the jewel of the state and vital to our economy. As the Attorney General mentioned, more than $44 billion in coastal revenue was generated in 2016, and our marine fisheries resources alone contribute approximately $2.5 billion annually to New Jersey's economy. Oil and gas exploration and drilling in the mid-Atlantic could have devastating effects on our environmental resources, already dealt a heavy blow from Superstorm Sandy. We cannot expose ourselves to the possibility of a man-made natural disaster off our coast. Evidence shows the negative impact that seismic testing can have on marine mammals that migrate through our coastal waters. We are an important migration corridor for federally endangered marine mammals and turtles. The impact of seismic air guns on whales and dolphins include behavioral changes like decreased feeding, avoidance of the noise, stress, and possible strandings. At DEP, we follow the best available science, and that science tells us that seismic testing is not in the best interest of our natural resources. We will never back down from protecting our oceans or our precious natural resources, and we will take no chances when it comes to this issue. We stand together with you, we thank you for coming, and the Attorney General and the Governor to oppose any actions that will threaten our shoreline. Thank you.
Now, before we take your questions, I want to just thank the team that made today's efforts possible. I want to start by thanking my counsel, Jeremy Feigenbaum, who led the effort on behalf of the Attorney General's office. I want to thank Michelle Miller, who's the director of our Division of Law, Assistant Attorney General Kevin Jesperson, Section Chief Gary Wolf, Assistant Section Chief Darren Eppley, and Aaron Love, Jung Kim, Lisa Morelli, and Christina Miles, all of whom have taken the lead in responding to the federal government's rollbacks of national environmental rules. I want to thank Jennifer Moriarty and Diana Shin, who did tremendous work in my office on today's actions. I want to thank all the environmental advocates who are here today, who we've talked to over the course of this year, who we've heard, and who we are excited to work with as we move forward in our efforts. I see the Audubon Society is here, Baykeeper is here, Clean Ocean Action, Clean Water Action, Environmental New Jersey, League of Conservation Voters, Sierra Club, and the Jersey Shore Partnership, to name a few. And I want to thank our partners at DEP. They are terrific partners, Commissioner McCabe, Deputy Commissioner Manns, for the partnership on all of our environmental efforts this year. To say that this has been quite a year, unprecedented year in New Jersey on environmental actions, I think would perhaps be an understatement. For the first time in a decade, we were back in the NRD game, holding polluters accountable. We brought environmental justice actions. We pushed back against EPA's efforts to roll back rules that protect our environment. And now we're standing up to the Secretary of the Interior, the Secretary of Commerce, as they choose to treat New Jersey differently from other states, in particular Florida, by not giving us the same exemption and not explaining why they exempted Florida and not New Jersey from offshore seismic testing. So with that, we'll now take some questions on topic first. Yes, sir.
You had mentioned that New Jersey hadn't experienced this sort of activity in about 3 decades. Yet in 2015, there was in fact some seismic testing off of Long Beach Island that was opposed by the environmental community, and Deputy Commissioner, I believe, was part of that. Is that different than what you're opposing here today, or was that smaller in scale?
I'm going to let Debbie speak to that if she can. No, if she can, but my understanding is that the type of seismic testing and the type of incidental harm, the IHAs that they're seeking now have never been granted in 3 decades. And so that's why I say it's unprecedented based on the information I have. Yeah, we'll give it to you. It should be in the press release. The 8 states. We'll give you a copy of the complaint to give you a complete list of the 8 other states. Maryland is leading the effort with us, and then some of the other eastern states as well. But can we give? Yep, we'll give them a copy of the complaint. Yeah, I mean, it's filed in the district in South Carolina. We're joining in the Charleston division in South Carolina. There's an existing action down there that we've intervened to join along with 8 other states. Have I tried to reach out to the governor of Florida? No. I've tried to reach out to the Secretary of the Interior, and they were the ones who were responsible for overseeing the process here. And so when we sought these records, it was from them. We wanted to know why Florida got an exemption from the plan that Secretary Zinke announced earlier this year, where they were going to reopen offshore drilling. And so we've yet to get any answers from them. And so that's who we're talking to. Right there.
What's the timetable for the seismic testing itself?
So this is a 3-step process. We're in the first step, and the first step is to get these incidental harm authorizations, and after that, they go to the next step, which would be the seismic testing permits, and then it would be the drilling permits. So we're here on the first step trying to enjoin them from doing that. So whatever is going to happen or not happen will depend on the outcome of the South Carolina lawsuit, and if they get past the first step, then we'll challenge them on the next step, because I think between the DEP commissioner, the governor, my office, we're all in on stopping them from doing testing just 3 miles off our shore and having loud seismic air blasts that are going to be disruptive to 300,000 dolphins and whales here in New Jersey, among other species. Yep. Yeah, I can't predict the permitting process. If they are able to get the IHAs, which is the first process, and then that requires them to do the air blast, which is, large sounds off their coast, 3 miles off, every 10 seconds, which you could hear here, and the results of that will dictate their next step. So I think it's a process, and we're trying to stop them at the first step.
No, I think
I can't, there's 5 companies that have gotten the, that have applied for the first step, which is the incidental harm authorizations, and received those. And so I don't know how long that exact process takes. I know that the process is extremely disruptive to the environment and to people living near the shore, because it's going to happen within 3 miles. And so if there's additional information we could provide, it would be in our complaint at this point. And I think, again, it's the first step that we're intervening at. Anything else on that? Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. This process about opening up the Atlantic seaboard to drilling and testing, it was studied. It was studied thoroughly during the Obama administration. And the same agencies that are now opening it up again said at that point that it would be harmful to our environment and harmful to marine life and harmful to endangered species. And then when the Secretary of Interior, who's no longer there, came into office, they opened up this process again, and they went through a process that we claim is arbitrary and capricious, and came up with new science to fit what the law requires, and to conveniently allow them to open up this process, and to say that testing, the type of testing that they want to do, is only going to create an incidental harm when it's proven by their own records that's going to at least disrupt 300,000 dolphins and whales off our coast. That's just one example. But we have other examples in our complaint about how they've now used their science to conform to what the regulatory regime requires, throwing aside research that was done only at the end of 2017. End of 2016, excuse me.
Why do you think Florida was done? Why do you think?
I have no idea, and that's what we're trying to find out, and we would love all the documents in one fell swoop to figure out why Florida got treated differently. $44 billion in tourism revenue in New Jersey, over 800,000 jobs on the line if something goes wrong right off our coast during the course of the testing, or if they get to the next phases of it. And so I would like to know the answer to that. And Secretary Zinke might not be there, but we want all the documents to figure out why Florida was treated differently, because we can't figure it out. Yes, sir.
Are you also contesting under the Jones Act, the foreign vessels being used in sites and contesting the exemption that they're being given?
I don't know the answer to that question, so
I think it's part of the complaint right now.
not part of this complaint. What else? Yes, sir.
Was Florida ever officially exempted? I know that Ryan Hughes has said numerous times publicly that they would be, but they were under the draft proposed program, and they might still be in the proposed program.
Our understanding is that they're exempted. That's how we view it from this plan, which he announced in April, I think, of this year. Anything else? Any other questions? All right, with that, thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Huh?